So I'm very concerned that we have people going into schools, elementary schools, and telling children that there's this wide range of gender options, and depending on how you behave and dress and the toys that you play with and the things that you like to do determines where you fall upon that. And it has nothing to do with your genitalia, because girls can have penises and boys can have vaginas. And they're telling this to elementary school kids. And then we're having more and more elementary school kids being diagnosed with gender dysphoria because suddenly they feel like they've been told that they're born in the wrong body. And I want to use an illustration of how children think, 8 or 9 year olds. So when my son was about 8 years old, he came up to me and he said, "Mom, I think you're the tooth fairy." And he was really excited. He kind of solved this mystery. And I said, "You're right." And then he looked at me and he said, "How do you fly?" And this is an example of how little kids think. They have very tangential, very magical ways of thinking. So if we start telling children that their sex, their physical sex, is really meaningless, which is what the transgender movement is saying, that it's meaningless, and that the only thing that determines your gender and your sex is the kinds of activities that you like, the way you dress, the friends that you have. Yikes! This is like, we are in charge of creating reality for our kids, not creating a mythical world in which what you believe you are, you are. And it's okay when kids are playing to do this. When kids play, they pretend all the time. And this is good. Kids need to pretend. We like kids pretending, but they need to know that they're pretending. If we are going to say that we'll affirm people's beliefs about themselves, even when those beliefs are not true, we go down on a really kind of disturbing road, especially with children. If we start telling children that they can be something that they're not just by believing it, okay? We have people going into schools and telling children that their gender is not dictated by something innate and inherent like their sex, like their biology, but it's totally based on feelings. In addition, gender is totally dictated by stereotypes and gender roles. So we're going to have a whole generation of kids that grow up that don't understand that biology is a real thing, that girls don't have penises and boys don't have vaginas. We're going to grow up with a whole group of gender dysphoric kids who don't get treatment for their gender dysphoria. Instead, they're just affirmed in their delusional thinking. And if the Equality Act passes here in the United States, therapists and medical providers will actually have to affirm a child's gender dysphoria rather than try to find the underlying cause of it. This is not about supporting the very tiny number of people who need to transition in order to manage gender dysphoria when they're adults. This is about actually creating a generation of gender dysphoric children and then telling them the best solution to manage their gender dysphoric feelings is to transition, and often medically transition. So we have 8-year-olds, the age my son was when he asked me how I was able to fly, who are now getting cross-gender hormones. Not puberty blockers, cross-gender hormones. These are children who will never go through normal puberty. The transgender movement has gotten the idea that the best way to gain acceptance is to normalize transgenderism. To say that children as young as 3 or 4 know what gender they are, that gender is innate and inflexible, and yet, at the same time, children can change their gender identity as long as it's like changing towards the opposite sex. So what they are saying that it's okay for a child at some point in their life to decide that they are the opposite sex. But if a child has gender dysphoria and wants to resolve that, we're not going to support that. We're actually going to make it illegal for our therapists to help a child to resolve or manage their gender dysphoria. Another issue is that the vast majority of children who develop gender dysphoria as a result of an underlying issue don't know what that underlying issue is because they're children and they don't understand the world the way grown-ups do, which is why they look to grown-ups for guidance. It's our job as grown-ups and healthcare providers and therapists to guide children towards functional thinking, towards reality, towards accepting what is and isn't true. And feelings are important, but feelings do not dictate reality. The transgender movement is actually harming children. It's harming society. And for some reason, people are so afraid of being politically incorrect, of being labeled a transphobe, because everybody knows that if you're politically incorrect, it means you're a transphobe. And if you're transphobe, it means you're a Nazi. And if you're a Nazi, it means you deserve to die. So there's this whole narrative that the far left has been perpetrating on society. So people are afraid to stand up and say, wait, let's think about this. If gender dysphoria is not innate, which it is not, because children can develop it as a result of an underlying issue, because the majority of children with gender dysphoria have that dysphoria resolved. It is not innate. Gender is not innate. We're creating gender dysphoric children by telling them that they can be born in the wrong body, by telling them that the activities and the way they want to dress and the things they like to do dictate what gender they are, rather than the sex that they were born. We're telling children that their sex was assigned rather than observed and recorded. We're lying to children, and now we're trying to legislate these lies.